Hey guys, welcome back. We are starting a new book today. I know the last time I made a reading video, it was Star Wars The Darth Plagueis novelization by James Luceno. I did complete the book in between then and now. I hope you're all doing well and have enjoyed my cooking content, my nature shorts, and other little life stuff there. I cannot wait to get into this book called Manufactured Consent by Noam Chomsky. Now you might be wondering, why is it on page 88? Well, because the beginning, is the index, and you have the introduction to the novelization itself, and then the next part is the module breakdown. The original book was written, I think, in '94. This book was written, I can think, 2004, a little after, so it's the newer edition. So it's kind of describing the changes with the scientific methods, the graphs they used, how they collected the data in their studies. So that's why it's starting so late in the book. Well, I hope you guys enjoy. And let's get started with chapter 1. So, a propaganda model. The mass media serves as a system for communicating messages and symbols to the general populace. It is their function to amuse, entertain, and inform, and to inculcate individuals with the values, beliefs, and codes of behavior that will integrate them into the institutional structures of the larger society. In a world of concentrated wealth and major conflicts of class interest, to fulfill this role requires systematic propaganda. In countries where the levers of power are in the hands of a state bureaucracy, the monopolistic control over the media, often supplemented by official censorship, makes it clear that the media serves the ends of a dominant elite. It is much more difficult to see a propaganda system at work where the media are private and formal censorship is absent. This is especially true where the media actively compete, periodically attack and expose corporate and governmental malfeasance, and aggressively portray themselves as spokesmen for free speech and the general community interest. What is not evident and remains undiscussed in the media is the limited nature of such critiques, as well as the huge inequality in command of resources and its effects both on access to a private media system and on its behavior and performance. A propaganda model focuses on this inequality of wealth and power and its multi-level effects on mass media interest and choices. It traces the routes by which money and power are able to filter out the news fit to print, marginalize dissent, and allow the government and dominant private interest to get their message across to the public. The essential ingredients of our propaganda model, or set of news, quote, filters, fall under the following headings. 1. The size, concentrated ownership, owner wealth, and profit orientation of the dominant mass media firms. So, what they're saying here is when you have a media company, your job is to spread your message as far and wide as possible. But also, you want to concentrate the ownership, which means you want to own other companies. You want to buy newspaper outlets. You want to buy online media outlets. You want to buy local news networks. So you can expand your influence and spread your message even more. Your job is to control the narrative. But it's also profit driven. You have to tell stories that'll make you wealthier and gain more viewerships. Because the more truth you tell, the less likely people are going to watch. They want to hear, they want to see entertainment. They want the horse race. They want infotainment. They want people to be arguing back and forth and rah rah without a proper message coming around. Number 2, advertising as the primary income source of the mass media. Since what I just said, they want to be advertiser friendly. The advertisers do control what they say, what the news hosts say. Whether it's a Boy Scout, Girl Scout ad, or a pharmaceutical ad, a toy store ad, whatever, they help control the narrative. That benefits their business interest too. And then number 3, the reliance of the media on information provided by government, business, and quote experts, funded and approved by these primary sources and agents of power. So, this one here is very self-explanatory. Whenever you go on a local news station and there's like a mental health update, and you're saying, oh, 10,000 people have been tested for mental health issues, and they'll bring on a concerned parent or a mental health expert. A huge portion of the time, and this has been proven through previous studies recently, that these quote experts are not real experts. They're brought on by the company, or they're paid off by the news network, or some other third party entity. It's unlikely that concerned parent or that mental health expert is really a professional. And number four, second to last, quote flag as a means of disciplining the media. And five, quote, anti-communism as a national religion and control mechanism. What he's referring to is during the original Red Scare era into the Cold War, and now we're seeing that playback again, where communism is scary. If you support these policies or these companies sponsor these influencers, it's communism. That's what they're getting at. These elements interact with and reinforce one another. The raw material of news must pass through successive filters, leaving only the cleansed residue fit to print. They fix the premises of discourse and interpretation and the definition of what is newsworthy in the first place. And they explain the basis and operations of what amount to propaganda campaigns. The elite domination of the media and marginalization of dissidents that results from the operation of these filters occurs so naturally that media, news people, frequently operating with complete integrity and goodwill, are able to convince themselves that they chose and interpret the news, quote, objectively, and on the basis of professional news values. Within the limits of the filter constraints, they are often objective. The constraints are so powerful and are built into the system in such a fundamental way that alternative bases of news choices are hardly imaginable. As in, they don't want you going to find an independent news source on YouTube or another outlet. They want you to just watch them. In assessing the newsworthiness of the U.S. government's urgent cleanse of a shipment of MiGs to Nicaragua on November 5, 1984, the media did not stop to ponder the bias that is inherent in the priority assigned to government-supplied raw material, or the possibility that the government might be manipulating the news, imposing its own agenda, and deliberately diverting attention from other material. It requires a macro alongside a micro, story-by-story view of media operations to see the pattern of manipulation and systematic bias. Let us now turn to a more detailed examination of the main constituents of the propaganda model, which will be applied and tested in the chapters that follow. So back to that paragraph, what the author is saying here is when they cover a news story, they'll make it sensational, they'll make it dramatic. They're not going to go into detail and tell the full truth of what's going on. They'll try to take another news report and relate it to it, but also use that as a distraction from what is really going on, and the government does help manipulate the narrative, which is true. So that's what this paragraph is talking about. So, part one, size ownership and profit orientation of the mass media, the first filter. In their analysis of the evaluation of the media in Great Britain, James Curran and Jean Seaton described how, in the first half of the 19th century, a radical press emerged that reached a national working class audience. This alternative press was effective in reinforcing class consciousness. It unified the workers because it fostered an alternative value system and framework for looking at the world, and because it, quote, promoted a greater collective confidence by repeatedly emphasizing the potential power of working people to effect social change through the force of, quote, combination and organized action. Think about that. This was deemed a major threat by the ruling elites. One MP asserted that the working class newspapers, quote, inflame passions and awaken their selfishness, contrasting their current condition with what they contend to be their future condition, a condition incompatible with human nature and those immutable laws which Providence has established for the regulation of civil society. The result was an attempt to squelch the working class media by libel laws and prosecutions, by requiring an expensive security bond as a condition for publication, and by imposing various taxes designed to drive out radical media by raising their costs. These coercive efforts were not effective, and by mid-century, they had been abandoned in favor of the liberal view that the market would enforce responsibly. Coran and Seaton show that the market did successfully accomplish what state intervention failed to do. Following the repeal of the punitive taxes on newspapers between 1853 and 69, a new daily local press came into existence, but no one new local working class daily was established through the rest of the 19th century. Coran and Seaton note that, indeed, the eclipse of the national radical press was so total that when the Labor Party developed out of the working class movement in the first decade of the 20th century, it did not obtain the exclusive backing of a single national daily or Sunday paper. That note means back in the 19th and early 20th century, newspapers were very influential in politics. If your candidate or party was backed by select newspapers, you had a greater chance of winning the election and getting your policies through. One important reason for this was the rise in scale of newspaper enterprises and the associated increase in capital costs from the mid-19th century onward, which was based on technological improvements, along with the owners, increased stress on reaching large audiences. The expansion of the free market was accompanied by, unquote, industrialization of the press. The total cost of establishing a national weekly on a profitable basis in 1837 was under £1,000. With a break-even circulation of 6,200 copies by 1867, the estimated startup cost of a new London daily was £50,000. The Sunday Express, launched in 1918, spent over £2 million before it broke even with a circulation of over 250,000 pounds. Think about that. You spent £2 million to reach 250,000 people. Money can spread your message. Similar processes were at work in the United States, where the startup cost of a newspaper in New York City in 1851 was $69,000. The public sale of the St. Louis Democrat in 1872 yielded $456,000. And city newspapers were selling it from $6 to $18 million in the 1920s. The cost of machinery alone of even very small newspapers has for many decades run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 1945, it could be said that, quote, even small newspaper publishing is big business and is no longer a trade one takes up lightly, even if he has substantial cash, or takes up at all if he doesn't. Thus, the first filter, the limitation ownership of media with any substantial outreach by the requisite large size of investment, was applicable of a century or more ago, and has become increasingly effective over time. In 1986, there were some 1,500 daily newspapers, 11,000 magazines, 9,000 radio, and 1,500 television stations, 2,400 book publishers, and 7 movie studios in the United States. Over 25,000 media entities in all. But a large portion of those among this set who were news dispensers were very small and local, dependent on the large national companies and wide services for all but local news. Many more were subject to common ownership, sometimes extending through virtually the entire set of media variants. Ben Bedikian stresses at the fact that despite the large media numbers, the 29 largest media systems account for over half of the output of newspapers, and most of the sales and audiences in magazines, broadcasting, books, and movies. He contends that these, quote, constitute a new private ministry of information and culture that can set the national agenda. Actually, while suggesting a media autonomy from corporate and government power that we believe to be incompatible with structural facts, as we described below. Bedikian also may be understating the degree of effective concentration in news manufacture. It has long been noted that media are tiered, with the top tier as measured by prestige, resources, and outreach, comprising somewhere between 10 and 24 systems. It is this top tier, along with the government and wire services, that defines the news agency and supplies much of the national and international news to the lower tiers of the media, and thus for the general public. Centralization within the top tier was substantially increased by the post-World War II rise of television and the national networking of this important medium. Pre-television news markets were local, even if heavily dependent on the higher tiers, and a narrow set of sources for national and international news. The network provides national and international news from 3 national sources, and television is now the principal source of news for the public. Now think about that, because before TV, the newspapers, and if there were telegraphs and be able to and cameras be able to film what was going on, they couldn't put it in news. They couldn't put it on TV back then because TV didn't exist. Well, when TV did exist, now you could film speeches, protests. You could film events, movie shows, and now you could see wartime efforts going on. You can film battles. This is what they're talking about. The manufacturing of cable, however, has resulted in a fragmentation of television audiences and a slow erosion of the market share and power of the networks. Table 1 to 1 provides some basic financial data for the 24 media giants, or their controlling parent companies, that make up the top tier of media companies in the United States. This compilation includes 1. The 3 television networks ABC, through its parent company Capital Cities, not anymore, CBS and NBC, through its ultimate parent General Electric GE, not anymore. 2. The leading newspaper empires, New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, Times Mirror, Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, Knight Ridder, Gannett, Hearst, Scripps Howard News House, Advanced Publications, and the Tribune Company. 3. The major news and general interest magazines, Time, Newsweek, subsumed under Washington Post, Reader's Digest, TV Guide, Triangle, and U.S. News and World Report. 4. A major book publisher, McGraw-Hill, we all know that brand from school. And 5. Other cable TV systems of large and growing importance, those of Murdoch, who owns Fox, Turner, Cox, General Corp, Taft, and Storr, and Group W. Westinghouse. Many of these systems are prominent in more than one field and are only arbitrarily placed in a particular category. Timing is very important in cable as well as magazines. McGraw-Hill is a middle publisher of magazines. The Tribune Company has become a large force in television as well as newspapers. Hearst is important in magazines as well as newspapers, and Murdoch has significant newspaper interest as well as television and movie holdings. So what they just said is how it is today. You may watch ESPN. Well, ESPN is owned by Disney, I believe. Okay, you could have, you have Fox Local News, you have Fox Sports, Fox Business, whatever. That's what he's talking about. Instead of just staying in news, you branch out to other fields. Now we run our own cartoon shows. We now are involved in sports. We cover other topics because it makes money and it keeps your brand alive. These 24 companies are large, profit-seeking corporations, owned and controlled by quite wealthy people. It can be seen in Table 1.1 that all but one of the top companies from whom data are available have assets in excess of $1 billion. Today, it is probably 10 times that amount. And the median size middle item by size, is 2.6 billion. It can also be seen in the table that approximately three-quarters of these media giants had after-tax profits in excess of $100 million, with the median at 183 million. Many of the large media companies are fully integrated into the market, and for the others too. The pressures of stockholders, directors, and bankers to focus on the bottom line of power. These pressures have intensified in recent years as media stocks have become market favorites, and actual or prospective owners of newspapers and television properties have found it possible to capitalize increased audience size and advertising revenues into multiplied values of the media franchises and great wealth. This has encouraged the entry of speculators and increased the pressure and temptation to focus more intensively on profitability. Family owners have been increasingly divided between those wanting to take advantage of the new opportunities and those desiring a continuation of family control. And their splits have often precipitated crises, leading finally to the sale of the family interest. Sadly, it does not look like I can zoom in on that graph for you guys. I wish I could, but I can't. This trend towards greater integration of the media into the market system has been accelerated by those loosening of rules, limiting media concentration, cross ownership, and control by non media companies. There has also been an abandonment of restrictions, previously quite feasible anyway, on radio TV commercials, entertainment mayhem programming, and, quote, fairness doctrine threats, opening the door to the unrestrained commercial use of the airwaves. Now, the fairness doctrine means that we have to be fair. You have to tell both sides. You can't, of course, dox anybody. You can't do libel and slander. You can't do any of that. But also, the fairness doctrine means there has to be, like, you can't have a monopoly on the media. That's like the fairness doctrine. If I'm wrong, you can also correct me in the comments down below what the definition is. I'm pretty sure that's correct. It's been a while. The greater profitability of the media and a deregulated environment has also led to an increase in takeovers and takeover threats, which even giants like CBS and Time Inc. directly attacked or threatened. This has forced the managements of the media giants to incur greater debt and to focus even more aggressively on unequivocal and profitability. In order to placate owners and reduce the attractiveness of their properties to outsiders, they have lost some of their limited autonomy to bankers, institutional investors, and large individual investors, whom they have had to solicit as potential, quote, white knights. Thank you guys for listening. A part 2 will be coming soon. Let me know what you guys' thoughts were in the comments below. If you know about Noam Chomsky and his work, if you have read the book before, if there's any questions you might have, any thoughts you'd like to share about what has been read in chapter 1 so far, let me know, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.